G'day YouTubers, welcome back to my channel, Workshop Fun. Well, today is the day that I post the big update that I talked about in my last video when I had the interior finished. So, there hasn't just been the interior, but there's also been a number of other things, and that's getting all the windows back in, which didn't just entail simply sliding windows back in. It has entailed pulling windows apart, re-gluing them back together, and then putting them in. And that also has involved re-putting the rubber seals in, and before doing that, putting the silver topped tar backed tape down first before the rubber seal. And also, in case you haven't watched my other videos, every single window has come out of this caravan, and the plastic corners that come out in these caravans standard have been taken out and wooden blocks put in their place, and then another non-standard layer of protection that's been put into this caravan is the tar back silver top tape, and then the rubber seal goes in. So that's when you start getting back to the standard stuff. So to begin with, this main centre window had become largely unlaminated. It's a double glazed window, and over time the two plastic pieces can separate just from the sun's UV rays and whatever else that causes the glue to deteriorate. So I completely pulled that apart and separated the two pieces from each other, cleaned all the edges, and then used adhesive sealant around it and re-laminated the pieces back together. And then I had to semi-do that with this window here, and this window was okay, so I've left that. And then once I finished that, I got some plastic paint and silver painted the edges on the outside here to make them look pretty again. So every single window is now back in the caravan, and the only thing that's left to go in the caravan now is the doorway, and I'll come to that doorway now and I'll show you what's left to do on that. Okay, so here on the doorway you can actually see the plastic corners that these caravans come out with on all the windows and the doorway. So we take them out, we glue a wooden block in here in its stead, and then we use the die grinder and shape the wooden block to match the curve of the alloy that surrounds the caravan. So once that's done, then the metal frame for the door will go back on. But first off, the same silver back, tar back silver topped tape will go on, and that'll give it an extra layer of protection. And that's, that's going to allow the caravan to basically last longer without having a whole ton of maintenance done on it again. So, okay, let's come into the caravan now. So, since my last video, there has been a lot done. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of time. I'll just have a sip of my coffee while I'm talking about all this. Excuse me. Okay, so the oven's now back in, and the wooden trim is now back in. Not only is it back in, but it's all been modified because the bigger fridge went in. The sink is all done, and the push button that I talked about is all in, and the plumbing's all done and up and running. So let's get started with just this area to begin with quickly. Okay, so this wooden trim, which somebody added on to this caravan a long time ago, had to come out, and that all got dug out when the other fridge came out, and we had to dig it out when we were leveling all this off and putting the new vinyl in for a nice new splashback and new timber in to replace all the rotten timber that was down there. So I spent ages and polyurethaned this timber, and then also I had to adjust it to suit the new fridge, so that required just adding a little, I just added a little plastic extension here onto the end of this, and then I had to actually trim this bit, and that enabled this to sit properly on the bench again, because when this bench got leveled it changed how everything sat on it. Then I had to cut out a nice trim in between here, and I was able to use a bit of the timber that's come out of this caravan that has the same veneer over it. So now this also screws into the side of this, and that helps hold it straight with the rest of the fridge. So after that was done, I was able to then turn around and basically just finish off aligning everything, and I bought these new screws that match the timber better and screwed them in. So let me tell you that, like, that alone was hours of work. Like, these things take ages. Excuse me, I'll just stop this tap from dripping. There we go. Okay, so next up was aligning all of this again and getting this cabinetry to work, and once again, no small feat. So you can see I had to create a stainless right angle, and I put that in to screw this down to the floor. Like, everything was very weak in this caravan, so it's all being strengthened, and I even screwed a block in behind there onto the floor and then into this wall here. So that helps, that gives it a lot of extra strength now and stops it from being able to move and flex as much as it did. Excuse me, I'll just put this back in, and you can sort of see my filter system. It's all tucked away in there nicely, and I can get at that quite easily with a strap oil filter remover. That actually wraps around these nicely to undo them. So that's just a little tip for anybody who's needing to undo these and their filters are in a tight place. I'll show you my plumbing job. What I did here, because it was so close to the fridge, I turned around and got the original bit that screws onto the bottom of the plug typically, and used the die grinder and reshaped it, and then I bought a fitting for the push down plug, a plastic fitting, and that fits into what used to be the original plastic plug fitting, and I used the pipe glue and glued that together, screwed it onto the push plug fitting. I had to chop down a bit of the thread on the push plug fitting, so I had the adequate clearance between this. I chopped out this section here, so then now the plumbing can run down into there where it did originally, and hey presto, it all works nicely. And this here, that still slides in, and the plumbing doesn't get in the way too much of, you know, you can still load this drawer up quite a bit, and anything below the height of the drawer at the back will still fit in too. So that's good. A little bit of a compromise, but at least it's all plumbed up without any major modifications. Putting this fridge in meant that the fridge is quite a lot wider than the other one, which is great, but it also sits very close to that plug fitting for the sink, so it was either rip the sink out and replace it, which I didn't want to do, or adjust the plumbing drastically, which I didn't want to do. So I just modified the push plug and the existing plug fitting and came up with that solution. The other thing that I had to do is, this fridge is that much wider than the old one that even here there used to be a trim that came out, or a lip that came out, and it held another bit of trim. So, and that was plastic, and I just chopped that plastic flush with the wooden trim. And the plastic is actually this bit here, it's made out of plastic, and it folds around and it had a lip. But the fridge is occupying all that space now, so I carefully did that with my multi-tool and then very carefully sanded it all off, and that was that, and it all came out good. So now I got a nice fridge in there, the maximum size I could ever get in there. It's all, you know, it's a decent sized bar fridge, and yeah, just like that, it's all in. Just like that. Anyway, on to more things I had to do. So this bottom drawer had to go back in, so I had to entirely remake this, which was no easy feat. The other one was very weak and also just not really doing much, so I think it got a bit broken or something. So anyway, I remade this out of 30mm thick barge board that's treated, so nice and strong. Then I added this bit of alloy plate down here and a wooden block underneath that at the right level to screw down to the floor, and then this is riveted into this thin wooden panel that's between the cabinetry and the oven. So that's all done, and then I don't know if you'll be able to see it. No, I don't think so, but I made a very strong plywood right angle. It's hard to see in there, unfortunately. I'll try turning the brightness up. No, it's not making any difference. So yeah, you'll just have to take my word. In behind the oven to hold this, yeah, I'll just stand up again. In behind the oven to hold this wall to the wall firmly in its new position, which is level, because it wasn't level when it got put in this. I made up a solid plywood right angle and glued that right angle together and screwed it together, and then that screws onto the wall, and there's a wooden block screwed and glued onto the fine wooden panel that runs along here between the cabinetry and the oven, and then that right angle screws onto that wooden block and holds this wall very firmly now, so it's not all flexible and inclined to coming unstuck and starting to look really atrocious. Then I also had to run a bit of ply underneath this lip of the bench, and in behind the oven here I screwed the fine wall to that bit of ply, and then also ran an alloy lip over the top of that fine wall and screwed that through the fine wall into the bit of ply that I put in, and now that acts like a sandwich and holds it there really firm up the top, which is good. And then down here you can see that there's a new wooden block, and that holds this kickboard down here firmly in place. And then up here is a wooden bit of treated wood, and then that's pin nailed onto this section here and glued, and then there's another bit of ply in behind there that screws into that, and then that also screws into this wall. So once again, so all of this is reinforced now, which is, that was a lot of work. So that is all looking really nice and tidy, and yeah, that was many hours of hard work, and also just trying to nut it out in general. Today I just finished fitting the blinds in here. That's all done now. A while ago, just me being me, running with the theme, I glued this bit of stainless trim in, and that's glued to the splashback wall, so that stops any water running down here. And I put this white bit of plastic trim on top of the stainless trim just to give it a little bit of a feature. And when you stand back and look at it, I actually think that came out quite nice. Then I put a trim in here, and while I was at it, bought a 4-plug and put that up there. Also, for my computer, it's my computer will be plugged into the inverter at all times, so if there's ever a power cut or anything, that won't affect my computer. It'll still keep running, and that's what I did for that. So I ran all the wiring for that, which was another big job, and that hooks into my inverter's junction box. And yeah, that's all been sided and certified, so that's great. Okay, so moving right along, the next project I'm doing is in here. I'm fitting a diesel heater, and there's going to be just a little shelf built over the top of this so things can still get stacked on top, and the shelf will end here so all the oven trays can still slide in there. So the diesel heater's being fitted out, and the heater's control is screwed in but not hooked up yet, but it's just sitting in up there, so it's all largely hidden and tucked away, and that's all coming along nicely. I'm waiting for a 20-litre alloy tank to arrive that I brought, because I don't like the standard plastic 10-litre one that comes with these kits. So, and I've also bought a silent diesel pump, diesel heater pump, and a silent hanger, and a couple other little bitsies coming for it too. Now, moving right along to the bedroom, once again, another load of work's been done. As I said in my last video, I will have to touch this in after fitting the alloy trim up there and fitting this wooden foot box or footwell. So I made this wooden trim, which wasn't as straightforward as it looks. I actually routed this edge to give it just a bit of a nice feature, sanded it all and painted it all to match the wall, and then ended up having to actually repaint this whole wall, because same paint but different pots of paint at different times, it didn't quite, the trim wouldn't match with this. It was a lot grayer, so I ended up buying a new pot of paint and just repainted this whole wall, and now it all matches nicely. Surprisingly though, the footwell seemed to match, so cool. Left that alone and just, yeah. Right, the other thing that's all done now, as of just yesterday, but very pleasing to see it done. I'll see if I can't turn on this light and turn this light off. There you go, that's better. So there's no light shining overhead now. That is my bedroom's feature wall, all completely done. There's a bit of material, grey material that sticks to that foam up the top. That's still out because there's still the bathroom ceiling to do. That's the last thing to do in the interior. But yeah, that's all done now, and looks way better than what it did when I brought it. very nice to see. So yeah, once again, that was a lot of work. So once again, like all the rest of the windows, it had all been overhauled, the same wooden blocks, and I put the tar-backed silver tops tape on this one, and then put the rubber seal in, and then laid this inlay in. And these inlays, even though they're just a decorative feature, they take an awful long time to get these plastic inlays. I'll see just there, see that grey plastic inlay? It takes a long time to tuck that into the rubber, like a long time. I couldn't get over it. It's like, oh, this is such a horrible, tedious job, but it is way more aesthetically pleasing to see that in there. Now, when these rubbers go in too, that's the other thing that you got to do. These all have to be stapled, so sealant gets run along over the top of the silver top tar-back tape. You put sealant over the top, then the rubber seal goes in, then you staple it, and then you lay the inlay in. So not a straightforward job. Each one takes a while. And when your caravan has got 9 windows, like this one does, it really takes a while. Frank did more than me, but which is really good of him, thank goodness. But I thought I'd do the last 3, and that was a learning curve for me. I appreciate the work Frank did all the more now, because I can see how tedious it is. Okay, moving on to the bathroom. There we go. Yep. Sorry, this switch, I'm going to have to clean it sometime. There's a bit of dust in it or something. But there you go. You can see the blinds back in. And that window's all back in too now. So all the same process. So that's all done, which means the bathroom is completely finished, bar the ceiling. And I just still got to do that little bit. But these are not majors compared to what's being done. So yeah. Okay, now moving right along to underneath the bed. I'm just going to quickly show you this underneath here. Right, I'll turn the light on underneath here. So for the diesel heater to power it, you can see 2 bus bars set up down there, and I've got 16mm square tin plated copper wired with tin plating and silicon insulation over the top, so really good quality wiring through there. And that's coming from my main bus bar system to here onto these smaller bus bars. They're rated at 300 amp. So that's going to power my diesel heater, and also, as you can see, there's another fuse box there for anything that I add in the future. But you'll also see there is another little solar charger there, a little 20 amp one. That's because I've got one more little baby solar panel coming that I'm going to chuck up on the back of the caravan. And that'll, so I've got 1435 now. That'll give me 1545 watts. It's a 110 watt panel. And then if I ever want to, I've allowed myself some breathing room, so I could hook up an Anderson plug and then turn around and get some more of those 110 watt panels if I ever want to, and run them in series with the one that will be on my roof. So we'll see. I don't know if that'll ever happen or not, but at least I got the breathing room there to do it with the 20 amp solar controller. So I just fitted that tonight. I'm still waiting for the solar panel to arrive, and then I'll fit that on the roof. After that, it'll just be a case of running the wiring, which I've come up with how I'm going to do that. So it's not going to be too hard. Let's just say there'll be no more holes going in my roof, and I'll show you on the next video, hopefully. The other big thing that's been done lately, this took a lot of time. You can see all these holes in the ply. Somebody put these sheets of ply in on top of the bed framing, the wire mesh that used to be underneath these bits of ply. That's good. It actually gives the bed more strength, which is not a bad idea. The problem is though, is it takes away the mattress's ability to breathe. So I drilled all these holes. I just marked a grid pattern and drilled them out as best I could. The grid ain't perfect because I had to dodge ribs, metal ribs that support the bed up the top. And then after that I countersunk each hole, and then after that I just painted it the same white. Even though the mattress is going over the top, it just makes it look more presentable if the mattress is off it, and makes it look like it hasn't been touched by a bunch of monkeys. So yeah, that's all done now. Okay, so yeah, I think that's about all for now. I'm just going to sit back down here. Alright, so as promised, that's all the interior pretty much done, apart from bathroom ceiling saw. That's neither here nor there compared to what had to be done before. At least all the kitchen is back together, the bedroom is finished. Yeah, I think the whole interior is finished now, apart from just a couple of minor little bits. So yeah, it's coming along. Okay then, thank you very much for watching. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.